Are there? I know that you have referred to, examples where, for example, some of the My Society initiatives in the UK, like Fix My Street and so on, that they actually have and largely as a result of sort of social movements. Tom Steinberg and so on, was a trailblazer for all of this, and similarly here we've got Sunlight Foundation and so on. Do you think that sort of groundswell movement forces government to do things better because it's clear that the community itself can do it if government doesn't?
So I think we need to separate a bit these distinct things. Even if you look at My Society, they do many different things. So we did some analysis, for instance, of Fix My Street data. We looked at 4 or 5 years of Fix My Street data. I don't remember now how many years. But one of the things that we see is that what Fix My Street does is that it works well for governments that are already willing to respond. When the problem is that what Fix My Street does to some extent is that it gives access to distributed information about problems in public service delivery or like public infrastructure, right? But having said this, you look, it's not that every government is responding equally to that. So the issue of responsiveness is there. So I would say that solutions like Fix My Street are great for governments that are willing and capable to respond, but where the problem is a gap on knowing about where the problems are or not.
Okay.
The question is whether a solution like Fix My Street, in which you report problems and that becomes public. Another issue that Fix My Street may do, another mechanism that may make it function, is by making problems public in a website and showing whether governments respond or not, does it prompt them more to action than if I just call the government? This we don't know, right? And in the final and third hypothesis, so we can have like on issues, on tools like Fix My Street, you can have 2 hypotheses. One, government is acting because they're just having access to distributed information that they didn't know. Number 2 is governments are responding actually because now there's visibility to their action and to their non-action, so there's a cost, naming and shaming mechanism. And number 3, it's doing nothing. Because we see a million reports, I don't know, and X percentage of that being fixed. We know that governments cover potholes anyway, so that might just be a coincidence that those that are there being reported, that might be just like the proportion. We do not know. Having said this, we do have the sense, looking at Fix My Street data, we do have the sense that it's not a random event. So the third hypothesis, by the data that we looked at, we can rule out, particularly because we see that some types of claims or some types of constructions in the sentence also affect responsiveness. Otherwise, it will be totally random, and we do find. But we do find other things. Some of the data that we looked at Fix My Street, which shows again how technology can amplify or just replicate problems or issues that are not of a technological nature, is, although we need to be very careful on the interpretation of that, holding other factors constant. One of the things that I find is that if you are a male making a report over Fix My Street versus a female, you're more likely to have your answer. So women are less likely to have like their problem fixed than men. And which is somehow, which shows again, it comes from societal problems, but good news is that if you say please, your problem is more likely to be fixed as well, which is quite British, I must say. So, it was a fun finding for us.
But there's, Fix My Street and some of these other sort of community-driven initiatives, largely built on open data. Presumably the response also sometimes requires more technological support and sophistication. So for example, if one of the outcomes, I suppose, of some of these community-driven name and shame type solutions is that we have a response like non-emergency 311, or we've got, the numbers vary by country. But is there evidence that the community-driven approaches drive government to think about the systems or the technology solutions required to respond appropriately?
Yeah. I mean, and this is one of the things that we found. We, with Professor Jonathan Fox at American University, we've been doing some research, and actually what we find is that these solutions started by civil society, but which have a government-facing component, typically fix my street type of solution or reporting problems and so on. What we find is that they're much more likely to be successful when there's like an interface with pre-existing information systems or managed complaints management systems or customer relationship management systems that can follow up, right? So good functioning, good use of technology on public service, when it's citizen facing, you need to have a front office, but you also need to have a good back office of tracking and so on. And we do, our research does suggest that the success is highly dependent on these two pieces and not just on a good front office. And we found very similar cases in places as different as UK, India, and Uruguay, for instance. So yes, you need a good back office and government systems.
And what does that look like, that back office? Is it better access to data in order to answer queries? Is it joined up business processes? Is it connecting silos or crossing departments? What does the beast look like that provides a good provision of service?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to see it is almost like a dashboard which gives you indicators of responsiveness, right? To which extent problems are followed up or not. The second thing is to ensure that if the problem is not responded by this, second characteristics is routing it to the right agency or whatever service provider who's responsible for that issue. And the other characteristic is escalating it in case of non-responsiveness. So if you don't answer in 48 hours or whatever, it goes to your boss and so on. So I'd say targeting, and this is one of the things that we say, we've been working with the concept of targeted feedback, which is extremely important, that whatever complaint comes or whatever action or demand from the citizen comes, that you have that it is addressed to the person who is willing and able to respond.